meeting to order today pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the study of economic growth in the territories, which partly relates back to our pre-budget hearings. And today we have as a witness the Honourable Robert MacLeod, Premier. Welcome, Mr. Premier. Great to have you here. And Mr. Omond, who's Secretary to the Cabinet. Welcome, and I know you did send in a brief that has been sent to all members. So we'll open it up to remarks from yourself. Maybe before you start, you're obviously a star because we have quite a few members at the committee that aren't normally here, Mr. Tutu, Mr. MacLeod, and Mr. Bagnell. So welcome, Mr. Premier. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good morning, committee. I'm very pleased to see members of Parliament from the three territories here as well to back me up, and also to see some colleagues that I've worked with in the past. It's very good to see here. So thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to be here before you today. I appreciate committee's interest in seeking the views of the Government of the Northwest Territories on matters that affect the daily lives of our residents. Our government is one of partnership and consensus building. In order to serve the people who elected us, we must be able to fully participate in the decisions that will impact our people, our territory, and our future. To begin with, I would like to give you some context around the 1.1 million square kilometers that make up the Northwest Territories. Our residents live in 33 communities, ranging in population from less than 100 to 22,000. The population of the Northwest Territories is about 44,000 people, and about half that population is Indigenous, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. And I should also mention that in our Legislative Assembly we have 11 official languages. There are significant differences in economic and social indicators between the larger and smaller communities and between Indigenous and non-Indigenous populations. For example, the average income in the 327-person community of Polituck on the coast of the Beaufort Sea is $31,000 per year, compared to $71,000 in Yellowknife. Education attainment also shows serious discrepancies as well. More than 2,000 Indigenous residents over the age of 15 do not have a grade 9 education. In stark contrast to that, only 195 non-Indigenous residents over the age of 15 do not have grade 9. As many of you will know, grade 9 level literacy and numeracy skills are considered the most basic skills required to find success in daily life. The current gross domestic product of the Northwest Territories is $4.8 billion, with the resource development sector accounting for nearly 40% of our GDP. Our economy is extremely interdependent, with industries like construction, transportation, wholesale trade, and professional, scientific, and technical services being significantly impacted by the resource sector. When we talk about our economy, we are talking about the ability of our government to support our residents. That support comes in many forms, through programs and services, through decent employment opportunities, and perhaps most importantly, the ability to provide hope for a future for themselves and their communities. Tourism, technology, culture, and traditional activities make up a very small portion of our economy today, and we are looking to bolster those sectors to help diversify our economy. By way of comparison to the resource development sector, tourism accounts for 3.5% and fishing for 0.01%. Diversifying our economy is critical to providing opportunities for our residents, and the lack of access to supply management for our budding agriculture industry proves challenging. To bridge the gap between these sectors, we will need significant investment. The continuing challenge for achieving sustainable growth of the Northwest Territories economy is one foreign to most of the rest of Canada: the significant lack of public infrastructure. What many Canadians take for granted, Northerners must live without. Only 12 of our 33 communities have uninterrupted access via the all-weather highway system, and only 33% of the land area of the Northwest Territories is within 100 kilometers of all-weather roads. Not only does this impact our residents in terms of a high cost of living, but it also creates challenges for economic growth. I want to provide you with some context around government finances in the Northwest Territories. The government of the Northwest Territories has planned spending of $1.66 billion on operations and $266 million on infrastructure in the 2017-18 fiscal year. Our total revenue is expected to be $1.86 billion the same year. Federal transfers comprise a significant portion of revenue, 66%. Other portions include taxes, other transfers from Canada, and resource revenue. The government of the Northwest Territories, unlike provinces, operates under a federally imposed debt limit, which for the Northwest Territories is $1.3 billion. Our total borrowing is expected to reach $990 million in 2017-18. While the government of the Northwest Territories does have a fiscal strategy to manage our infrastructure investments within the federally imposed borrowing limit, committee should be aware that current debt service payment levels are affordable and only account about 1% of total annual revenue. In order for the Northwest Territories economy to grow, it will have to rely less on Canada for revenue to deliver programs and services. Federal investment in required infrastructure and flexibility in our borrowing limit will allow our government to invest today to sustain tomorrow's economy for our children and grandchildren. The Northwest Territories economy has not fully recovered from the 2008 global recession. The two largest diamond mines, who employ thousands directly and indirectly, could face closure within 10 years. The Snap Lake mine closed in 2016, while another diamond mine, Gahcho opened earlier in 2017 with an expected life of approximately a decade. Currently, the Northwest Territories exports over $2 billion a year annually in diamonds. The Norman Wells oil field is temporarily shut down due to the pipeline that carries the crude oil to Alberta needing repairs. This oil field is not likely to operate beyond the next 10 to 15 or 5 to 10 years, as production has been declining significantly. Given the current and projected prices for both oil and natural gas, we do not expect any significant exploration or production in the Northwest Territories for the next decade, even though the Northwest Territories holds 16.2 trillion cubic feet of marketable conventional natural gas and 193 billion barrels of oil. There are opportunities in exploration and mining related to minerals such as lithium, bismuth, and other rare earths, which are key components to emerging green technology and digital sectors. In fact, we have 2 mines for these commodities that have received their environmental regulatory permits but cannot secure the required financing to commence operations. We also have base mineral and gold projects that may be developed should the commodity markets continue to improve. In my view, and in the view of Indigenous government leadership in the Beaufort Delta, the unilateral decision by Canada to impose a 5-year moratorium on oil and gas exploration in the Beaufort Sea flies in the face of the government of Northwest Territories and Indigenous governments' right to self-determination. This unilateral decision has quelled any hope for oil and gas exploration in the region and has sent a message of uncertainty to all resource sectors across the Northwest Territories, including mining. The moratorium has all but closed the door on the approved Mackenzie Valley natural gas pipeline, which will sunset in 2023. As well, we are faced with the implementation of a carbon pricing system that will make exploration and development business case harder to make. What message has this sent to our youth about their future? We encourage them to stay in school, to make good choices, and to contribute to their communities. how can we expect them to make that commitment if at the end of their schooling there are no economic opportunities for them? Self-determination is crucial for the Northwest Territories for both public and Indigenous governments. Although there are land and resource agreements to be concluded, most Indigenous people in the Northwest Territories have settled agreements and are working towards implementing self-government. Similarly, the government of Northwest Territories continues to pursue the transfer of the legislation that governs most of the Northwest Territories, the Mackenzie Valley Resource Management Act. This is our right under the devolution agreement between the Northwest Territories and the Government of Canada. It is frustrating that this agreement is not fully implemented. Northerners see the impact of climate change on a daily basis, whether it is low water levels impacting our waterways and hydro system or shore erosion in the Beaufort Sea washing away buildings in remote communities, or the shocking decline in our caribou herds. For example, the Bathurst caribou herd has gone from a population of over 1 million to about 26,000. Northerners are attuned to the changing environment and the need to adapt. Investment in economic infrastructure, people, and sustainable communities is essential to address the future of our territory. Northwest Territories residents have the same aspirations as other Canadians, and a robust northern economy is a critical component of achieving those aspirations. A strong partnership with the Government of Canada is essential and to ensuring Northerners can achieve their social, environment, and economic goals. By working with our federal counterparts, the Government of Northwest Territories will help create a Northwest Territories where all people can thrive and be healthy, where a strong economy provides jobs and opportunities for all our communities, and where a well-managed environment contributes to our economic well-being and quality of life. Opportunities currently exist that will help address our medium-term economic and financial challenges. Expanding our all-weather road system will provide immediate economic benefits and facilitate economic growth. Developing transportation infrastructure is critical in supporting economic development that benefits Northerners and all Canadians, increasing social and economic opportunities for Northwest Territories residents, and building resiliency in the face of climate change. Recent projects include the Inuvik-Tuktoyaktuk Highway, which will be completed this year in 2017, and the Tlicho All-Season Road, a project being undertaken with funding from P3 Canada and the Government of the Northwest Territories. Two additional priorities are development of the Slave Geological Province Access Corridor and the Mackenzie Valley Highway. The Slave Geological Province Access Corridor opens important access to this mineral-rich part of Canada, both in the Northwest Territories and Nunavut. The Mackenzie Valley Highway is a major project to connect several communities to the public highway system and mineral resources on the heart of the Northwest Territories. The business case and substantial planning has already been completed and submitted to Canada. Reliable and affordable energy is essential for economic development and providing services in our communities. A key area for investment is the expansion of the Tulsan Hydro Facility. This project, in partnership with Northwest Territories Indigenous governments, will create economic opportunities, connect the Northwest Territories to the intercontinental energy grid, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 360,000 tons in southern Canada. The third key infrastructure investment is 3 smaller-scale renewable energy projects to reduce reliance on diesel-generated power. Collectively, these projects reduce greenhouse gas emissions, lower the cost of living, and demonstrate innovative solutions for off-grid diesel communities. These investments can help to ensure that the Northwest Territories maintains a strong economy and healthy environment that provides jobs and opportunities for residents and communities, and where our youth can be confident there will be employment and economic opportunities for them well into the future. Infrastructure is an important area for investment, and partnership with the federal government is required. As I said at the beginning of my presentation, the government of the Northwest Territories wants to fully participate in all decisions that affect our residents. When new policies and strategies are being considered, we must be involved in a meaningful way far in advance of implementation. We want to work with Canada, and we appreciate all of your interest in the Northwest Territories. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Premier, and thank you for the very direct approach you took in your presentation to call it as you see it. We appreciate that. I might say, in quite a number of years ago, I was up to your to one of the diamond mines in your area, and that's the only time I ever visited that area, and a very interesting area with a lot of potential. Before we turn to questions, I have one because it wasn't mentioned in your presentation, and I'll background it a little bit. When we were doing pre-budget hearings, we heard from all the regional development agencies and what they do. And in your area, it's Canmore. And I'm just wondering if you have any opinions on Canmore in terms of what they do, how helpful they are, do they have enough funding, anything along those lines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I personally have a long history with Canmore. With my background, I was quite involved with public service, specifically in the area of economic development. I found that Canmore, for the most part, is located in the territories, in the Northwest Territories. We've spent a lot of time so that our priorities are aligned, and also to work together to have more focused investment, and I would say that for the most part, the funding and investment from Canmore have benefited the Northwest Territories and the people of the Northwest Territories in all of the various sectors that they have provided funding.
Thank you for that answer. Then turning to 7-minute rounds, starting with Mr. Sabera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Premier. Thank you for coming down from up north, and it is up north. In your introductory remarks, you talked about potential ways of diversifying or diversification of the economy in Nunavut, and you mentioned the word would require significant investments. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that point, and then I'll have a second question to ask after that.
Well, thank you.
Northwest Territories.
In every area, we are hindered by the lack of infrastructure. For example, in mining and in the oil and gas, if there's any investment, there's extra costs involved because of the need to invest in infrastructure. In any other diversification, agriculture, fishing, what have you, we need investment in infrastructure, and the fact that most of our small communities are not accessible other than by air or by water in the summertime, and there's very little manufacturing in the north, so whatever economic diversification has to be brought in from the south. So consequently, if you look at the economic leakage, if every dollar and spend it in economic diversification, probably 70 to 75% winds up back in the south, or as we call it, outside. So.
And as Premier of Northwest Territories, obviously with climate change impacting the north in a significant way, can you talk about how it's impacting? Give myself a perspective on how it's impacting the economy and life for Northerners. What adjustments are being made, and you know what you see, what role that we can play in terms of assisting the citizens that live up there adjust to climate change and the negative impacts that's happening both in the north and obviously globally.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a very hard question. For us, living in the Northwest Territories, and my colleagues in Nunavut and Yukon, who can speak for themselves, are in a similar situation where we're affected on a daily basis by climate change. Growing up in the north, what we experienced 20, even 40, 30 years ago is very different, and I can have a litany of events that I can talk about where the water levels are down. Is no longer, I think this year we might have had 40 below one day. It used to be you get 45 below for 3 months straight. We have species of wildlife that are showing up in the north that were never there before, such as cougars, white-tailed deer. The tree line is moving further north. We have the Beaufort Sea. It used to be open, ice-free for 4.5 weeks a year. Now it's ice-free for 15 to 20 weeks a year because it takes longer for the ice to form. We used to wonder if a grizzly bear and a polar bear got into a fight, who would win. But we see our hunters are shooting hybrid bears, so I guess they don't always fight when they get together. Also, it's affected the way we build our roads. We had to change our construction of roads. It affected the way we build our buildings because of we live on discontinuous and permanent permafrost. So all of these things affect us. We have a very good arrangement with the Government of Canada where when we signed on to the Pan-Canadian Climate Framework, where we're going to work with the Government of Canada so that we are very concerned that a carbon pricing mechanism will add to the high price of living, and but we've been able to work with the federal government of Canada so that we'll find ways to make it work. Thank you.
I'm finished.
Albas.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Premier, thank you for making the large visit. I know it takes a lot to get here. Also just like to thank the fellow members of the Finance Committee because the openness to have you come in, to have other premiers come in to represent the views of people of the North, I think is an excellent opportunity for all of us. I know when I first got involved in politics, someone had told me, Dan, just remember Ottawa may only seem to be a few thousand miles away, but for us back home, it's like 30,000. Because sometimes the decisions are made so remote, and so I certainly appreciate your presence. I'd like to talk a little bit about the moratorium because you did reference it in your opening statement. Obviously, the moratorium I think surprised many. Were you consulted ahead of time? Was your government consulted?
We, as I said, it has been widely quoted in the media. We got a phone call 2 hours before. So.
Okay. So there has been a lot of changes down south, and obviously there's a new administration that is has already made some rollbacks in certain policies of the previous administration. If that was to occur, would you hope that the Government of Canada would likewise remove the moratorium if the Americans chose to do the same?
Well, we're on record that we'll work to have the moratorium lifted within 5 years, and I think that looking at what's happening in the United States, where the president has written orders to roll back some of the environmental provisions, it's not clear whether he's taken action to roll back similar provisions in the Beaufort, but certainly on the Alaska side of there has been renewed interest in oil and gas drilling. It's been reported that some Italian companies are seriously looking at getting into drilling on the Alaska side. So I guess it's still in motion.
Would your preference be, if that was to be done, that the United States, or probably with the United States, that Canada does the same? So you have the same options in regards to that?
Well, from what I understand, that train has left the station. As I said, we are seeking answers for existing work that had been bid on. There was over $2 billion worth of work that was bid on in the Beaufort on the Canadian side. That the Prime Minister indicated that this would only apply to new applications, but it's not clear what will happen to work that had been bid on and awarded previously. So there's about $2.3 billion worth work that I guess is still in limbo. There's been no answers. We haven't been able to get any answers on those questions yet. But
Okay. Well, I certainly hope you get that because certainty is so critical to attract investment. Now, just in regards to carbon taxes, obviously, being a territory, there's a slightly different arrangement. And given your population and considering I'm sure many communities are diesel dependent, have you looked to get an exemption from the carbon pricing framework? What's been the response back from government?
no, we haven't looked at an exemption, even though I know that some of our provincial colleagues have gotten exemptions. I think Nova Scotia has been given an exemption to continue to use coal up until the 2030s. But I think we're going to work together, look at our existing system. We have probably about 25 communities that rely solely on diesel, and we haven't found any economically feasible ways to get off diesel, although right now we've been holding public hearings on a new climate change policy for the Northwest Territories and a new energy strategy. And we have some environmental groups that came up on their own with strategies that claim that within 23 years we can become 100% free of diesel. So we're looking at that. But I think that it's going to require closely working with the federal government. We have asked for funding to convert to renewable and alternative forms of energy, to also invest more in hydro, and also to invest in road infrastructure that will reduce our greenhouse gas emissions.
Have you decided whether or not you're going to use a cap and trade system, which of course I think would make it even more difficult for you to be competitive with other jurisdictions like Alaska or other economic development opportunities? Or are you looking to do a carbon tax and then discuss with the federal government to redirect some of those funds to get off diesel?
We haven't finalized that because, as I said, we're still holding community consultations, but our preliminary analysis is that our population, our economy is too small for a cap and trade system to work or to be effective. So more than likely we would look at some form of other forms of carbon pricing, which will likely be a carbon tax.
Okay. I think that's all my questions.
Okay. Turning then to Mr. Dussel. 7 minutes if you need it, Pierre.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Premier, for being here with us this morning. I think this is a very important topic for our committee. That is the issue of the relationship between the federal government, the relationship between the federal and territorial governments, in this case, the government of the Northwest Territories. Now, you talked about the devolution agreement. In 2014, there was an agreement reached so that there could be more power provided to your government, and you talked about the Mackenzie Valley example that has not been repatriated to your government. Are there other examples of federal laws that would be in the same situation, that is, that haven't been provided to you yet, the authority over them?
Well, there's a number of areas. I guess the most important one, which took the longest for our government to achieve devolution in, has been the land and resources. We've achieved devolution in almost all of the other areas. Still outstanding from the devolution agreement is an agreement to be negotiated on management of the offshore, the Beaufort, which is still outstanding. The Mackenzie Valley Resource Management Act, the agreement was that we would review it after 5 years, where we're in a situation where we would like to be able to appoint our own members to the Mackenzie Valley boards. Right now we can't even, so that's an area that we want to, we've made representation that we shouldn't have to wait 5 years. And there's other areas that we had been working on for devolution that are still federal responsibilities. The ones that comes to mind is fisheries, and we still it's still a federal responsibility. And there's some other environmental provisions that are still with the government of Canada.
Quand vous parlez de
And you talked about resource development, offshore resource developments. The offshore resources, what you're saying is that there's not currently an agreement regarding the benefits and the loyalties you could get from that as a territory. Is that right?
That's right. And in our mind, we aspire to having the same kind of co-management as they do in Newfoundland and Nova Scotia. And but we are still waiting for. There was a trigger that was negotiated as part of the devolution agreement. The negotiations were supposed to start 6 months after devolution has been implemented, and it's been over 2 years now. So.
Okay. Et maintenant, peut-être sur la question.
And now, perhaps coming to the issue of retaining youth in your communities. That's an issue you targeted as well. Through the Library of Parliament and our analysts, we were provided with some numbers. We saw that a large proportion of the workers in the Northwest Territories came from other provinces or territories. For example, interprovincial and interterritorial workers represent a large proportion of your workforce. And you also said there's a problem retaining young people in your community. So what, in your opinion, would be the best way to address that problem? That is, on the one hand, trying to provide the jobs to people from your territory, not just from others, and also could that help with retaining your youth?
Well, the Northwest Territories is the only jurisdiction in Canada whose population has been declining for the past 10 years. I think New Brunswick joined us in that club for a few years here and there, but we're the only jurisdiction that sees our population decline. It's not by much. I think the most is maybe 400, 500 a year. And it was very concerning to us because it affects our funding. The formula financing is a large part of it is based on population. So we've been looking at ways to increase our population. And when we look at our small remote communities, we have 50-60% unemployment, and when you look around Yellowknife, there's anybody who wants a job can get a job. It's probably 100% employment, but the skills don't match up. We still fly out probably anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 workers every year to work at the diamond mines, and we haven't been able to resolve that. The people that fly in leave. If you live in the north and work in the diamond mine, there's $25,000 a year in northern allowance, and people that fly in are just foregoing that. They'd rather live in the south and forego that. So we've looked at a lot of different ways. We have the best student financial assistance program in Canada. We want our students to come back. A lot of them come back for 2 or 3 years until their student loans are paid off and they get experience. The North has a lot of good jobs where young people can get a lot of experience, and so they get very marketable skills, and they're snapped up after they work 3 or 4 years in the North. They can get a very good job in the South. And we have what we call the 2 and 4 phenomenon as well, where we have young professionals that come north by themselves and find a partner, then they have kids, and then they realize grandma and grandpa are a long ways away, and then they'll move. So then you have 4 people that move south. So I guess, to make a long story short, the best way we think to increase our population is immigration. And we have a quota, and our immigration is increasing every year. But again, we're faced, we think the Chinese, we've been to China quite a few times, the Chinese are very interested in immigrating, but it takes a long time to process their papers. But those are the kinds of things that we're looking at.
Et sinon, pour terminer, il me reste un peu de temps.
Do I have a little bit of time left just to finish up? I also often heard issues surrounding Nutrition North and the price of food products in the North. Is that still a problem? And is the program still doing what it's supposed to do, or is there a lot we can do to improve it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Nutrition North, I think, is a program that helps the people of the Northwest Territories and the other territories. Food security or food insecurity is starting to be a very, very big problem because when we were growing up, people that lived in the small communities, the only way they could survive is by living traditional harvesting off the land. You know, they'd catch all their food, they'd hunt and fish and trap, and now some of the wildlife populations are at risk. For example, caribou, which is a mainstay of people's diet. Now we almost ban 100% hunting of caribou. I think we have a small amount of tags that we make available to the Cleacho and the Yellowknife Dene people, but for the most part, so people have to go and buy their food from the store or grow their own food, and so you buy food from the store is very expensive. You know, steaks and pork chops are not cheap. So Nutrition North has had some issues, but certainly it helps the people of the North survive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Both, Mr. Fergus.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank the Premier of the Northwest Territories for being with us this morning. It's always a great pleasure to have you here in Ottawa. I'd like to ask some questions, but I'd also like to address them to Mr. Actually, I'd also like to give my time to Mr. Michael McLeod.
All right, Mr. McLeod.
Thank you, and I welcome the opportunity to ask you a few questions. A very informative presentation. You flagged a number of the issues that challenge us in the North, and the issue of growing our economy is an important one. We know that our smaller communities have challenges in terms of out-migration, and communities are shrinking in size. We have many social issues across the North. And in some of our studies, we've recognized that suicide is a symptom of the level of despair that is being created. And we're seeing, on the average, in the 3 territories, a suicide every 10 days. And in the Northwest Territories, it's every 45 days. And the state of the economy has a role in this and is factored in. We have a number of things that we need to address. You flagged some of them that are causing problems. The low population numbers result in lower numbers of investment in the North. We have the issue of land claims that are outstanding, and self-government issues that are outstanding and need to be resolved, and the lack of infrastructure. But we also have the issue of funding that is based on population. And I wanted to raise that one first. If you could just talk a little bit more on how we could benefit from base plus funding rather than population-based investment.
Thank you, and I was very pleased to see in the latest federal budget that they have committed to base plus funding, because this is an issue that has affected us in the North, not only Northwest Territories, but the other 3. But the 3 Northern Territories has been a continuous requirement to have per capita funding. And so, for example, on the infrastructure funding, we would, because we have a very small population, to build roads, we would have, if you do it on a per capita basis, we might get a couple $100,000 to build roads, and that might allow us to build maybe half a kilometer of road with that approach. So with similarly with healthcare, almost every program that we deliver on, if it's on a per capita basis, then we get very minimal amount of funding, although we're in the highest cost environment in Canada. And Base Plus allows us to deal with specific issues, allows us to build a road if needed, certainly allows us to have a healthcare system on par. I wouldn't say it's on par now with the rest of Canada, but certainly allows us to have a healthcare system where people can access health services, even in some of the smaller communities, and also allows us to, for our children to have education so that they can aspire to whatever they would like to aspire to. And we still have a lot of social issues. We spend 70% of our budget is spent on social programs, and we still have significant issues with suicide, and we still need to spend a lot more on mental health, obviously. Thank you.
My next question is on the issue of the borrowing limit. You indicated that we're not quite at our limit. We've got some room, but there is so much in terms of infrastructure need, and we have a huge infrastructure deficit. And the federal government still has a program. I mean, we still rely on cost sharing, and historically it's been at 75-25% sharing. Now, is it, the Mackenzie Valley Highway is a project you raised, the Slave Geological Province, the Tolson Hydro. With what you have room left in the borrowing limit and with the cost-sharing formula, will you be able to do it all three? Or would you be able to accommodate a number of these or one of these with what you have left? Because the Mackenzie Valley Highway is, if we did the whole thing, is well over $1 billion. 1.7, I think.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Our fiscal strategy took that into consideration, and I guess our borrowing limit was, I think, during the 15th Assembly, our borrowing limit was $350 million, and we did when we built the bridge, the Mackenzie Valley Bridge, we were able to increase our borrowing limit to, I think it was $500 million. And when we built the Inuvik-Tuk Highway, we wanted to be a partner, but our borrowing limit was hampering us, so we were able to increase it to $1.3 billion. So our fiscal strategy has been to for the first 2 years of this government, our 18th Legislative Assembly government, has been to have budget reductions so that we would be in a situation that we could invest in infrastructure. And so if we get all three of the infrastructure projects that we've been talking about, we think that we've more than likely, depending on the percentage investment requiring, we would also look at, as we have used in the past, the strategy of asking to increase our borrowing limit, because we think we're responsible government, we're responsible financial managers. We have AAA credit rating from Moody's, so we question the need for a borrowing limit, but we're prepared to play by the rules, and we would, if we're in that good position of having all of those infrastructure projects approved, we would seek to have the borrowing limit increase. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you both. I would just say on the base plus funding, Nunavut, Yukon, Northwest Territories, and PEI all have seen pretty strong value in that, because the fact of the matter is, without the base fund, those areas will just fall further and further behind. And so certainly agree with you on that point. Turning to 5-minute rounds, Mr. Leipert.
Premier McLeod, thanks for being here. Bob and I go back a long way, obviously, with the affinity between Alberta and Northwest Territories. Premier, a couple of things that I kind of wanted to pursue, and it's I guess more looking at what can the federal government do in terms of investment to open up the North versus sort of all of the things that we would traditionally think about spending money on in terms of infrastructure. The first thing that sort of comes to mind would be Is there opportunities with technology, investments in technology, that could open up opportunities for the North? I mean, the reality is the jobs of the future are going to be tied to technology, not to the hands-on type of work that we've seen in the past. And I'm wondering, is there would it be wise to emphasize that over the next 10 to 20 years, the federal government look at how technology could open up the North with investments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's certainly an area that we've always felt that it could be a way of the future. Our government has just completed spending $90 million on the Mackenzie Valley fiber optic link to connect all of our communities up and down the Mackenzie Valley. So that certainly will improve. We think that in a number of areas, very high-cost areas, innovation will reduce the cost, certainly with long-distance education, long-distance health.
Great.
And I think that with the technology nowadays, some people have said it doesn't matter where you're located. People have said, well, I can't, what would you do? I mean, we've gone through exercises where what would you do if there was no mining in the north, for example? What would you do? And there's been a lot of different ideas. Perhaps we could have call centers. If you can have call centers in India, why can't you have them in the Northwest Territories? Just reading the paper, I see New Brunswick is very interested in getting in the cannabis industry. So maybe there's opportunities there. We know you can grow it in the Northwest Territories.
So because the reason I say that is I know in Alberta, it seems like when people move to the north, there's a tendency in many cases to want to stay there. So it's not like people don't want to live in the north. It's just that what are the opportunities when they move to the north to stay there in terms of future employment? The other area that I wanted to maybe talk a little bit about is you talked about the diamond mines and the fly-in, fly-out. This has always been a big issue in Alberta, not so much anymore, but with the oil sands, the fly-in and fly-out. And it's terrific that we have the business investment, but at the end of the day, many of those same people, I could imagine situations in Yellowknife where people actually, it's beneficial for them to leave Yellowknife, move to Edmonton to work at the diamond mines because there'd actually be fly-in and fly-out out of Edmonton, whereas there isn't out of Yellowknife necessarily. So is there some opportunity to work with the federal Department of Finance on we're going through a tax review right now. Have you thought about having those discussions with the Finance Department to see whether your jurisdictions like yours would have the opportunity to benefit from some of that tax, personal tax that today doesn't go to your government, it goes back to the jurisdiction where those employees happen to live, yet you bear the costs of things like health care and other things if those workers are injured. Have you had any discussions with the federal Department of Finance in that matter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've had a lot of discussions with the Department of Finance. I guess in a number of areas. One, obviously, the more people we have in the Northwest Territories, the more money we get through the formula financing arrangement, so that benefits us. On the cost of living, the northern residents deduction has increased by 33%, so that'll help. And we also have a payroll tax, which we instituted several years ago, which I think it's at 4%, and we were thinking of increasing it, increase it to 10%, but it becomes a problem because if we jack it up, the federal finance has said, well, you can jack it up, but you're going to have to collect it yourself because they're not going to collect it for us. And what we found at the time when we looked at it, the cost of collecting wouldn't be feasible for us to do it to collect. So
does that apply to the fly-in and fly-out folks?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Okay. Yeah, very quickly. About a year ago, if I recall, the Supreme Court decision relative to Métis jurisdiction and how the federal government treats Métis versus Aboriginal. Has anything happened as a result of that Supreme Court decision that's been of a benefit to your jurisdiction?
Not yet. I think they're still waiting. I think most people figure it'll take a couple of years, I think, for the federal government to respond. But we've been, in the Northwest Territories, we've been dealing with the Métis as if that has already been in place. We've been paying for Métis health benefits for at least 15 years now, okay. And so we got an invoice ready to send as soon as we find out what the federal government decision is with regards to Métis benefits, at least for health benefits. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. Mr. Ouellette, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Premier, for coming here today. I very much appreciate it. I was just like to correct the record, though. I don't think we should actually see a Métis versus Aboriginal, because in fact, Métis people are Aboriginal people as well under the Canadian Constitution. In fact, you know, it's a bit of a, it's just the nature of who they are as well. They're also Indigenous people. I was just wondering if you could just talk, Mr. Premier, about the Mackenzie Highway and the importance of the transportation and infrastructure that you need in order to economically develop your region and your territory.
Well, the highway system is very critical to the existence of the North because it provides all of the services. So the Mackenzie Valley Highway, for example, right now it's a winter road system. So for maybe 2 months of the year, we can drive into the isolated communities in the Sahtu, and it allows people to drive in and out, and they can buy their own groceries, building supplies, and what have you. And it reduces the cost significantly. And similarly, for bring fuel into the communities, and if you can bring it in by winter road, then it would be a lot better if it went all-weather road, because you wouldn't have to worry about breakup, freeze up, and those kinds of things, or having to fly in most of your basics. So infrastructure is very critical. It allows for economic development, and it also reduces the cost of living for people in those communities affected.
Could we also assume to a certain extent, Mr. Premier, that it would also be attractive for people to have a road for their communities? It would be something that would probably keep them in the region if they could gain easy access in and out of their own communities to other communities?
That's my expectation. I think that communities along a road system are more stable, and I think that we're starting to see more and more that people in this isolated communities are moving more to regional centers, which are more than likely to have all-weather road access.
Also, I was just wondering, Mr. McLeod, if you could also discuss a little bit the ideas surrounding the hydro development that you're looking to do, and its importance, electricity, and because I know there's a lot of groups that don't like hydro development. There are some that do, but what would this do? Why is this energy important?
Well, in the Northwest Territories, we have significant hydro potential. It's on par with James Bay, and we have legacy hydro projects in the north that were built for mining developments. And for example, at Tolson is the one that we've been talking to the federal government about. It's an existing hydro facility that was built to provide power for Pine Point, which was a community that was built in conjunction with a lead zinc mine, and when the mine shut down, they tore the community down, but they still have a hydro facility that generates about 18 megawatts of power. And what we're talking about is if we're going to go to a carbon economy, if we can build expansion to Tolson and export power to say Saskatchewan or Alberta, we can use those revenues to invest in other areas to convert other communities as well.
And I just have one final question, a very short one. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about languages in the Northwest Territories. I know there's been some controversy in certain northern regions surrounding language, and I was just wondering if you could talk a bit about what the Northwest Territories is doing to support not only the official languages, le français et l'anglais, de notre nation, mais également les langues,
The French and English of our nations, but also Aboriginal languages.
indigenous languages of our country.
Yeah, merci beaucoup. We used to speak Michif at home. So, as I said, we have 11 Aboriginal or 11 official languages, and some members of our Legislative Assembly, not so much now, but over the years were fluent in their Aboriginal languages, and they had arranged for translation services. For government to work to preserve those languages has been very difficult. We've taken a number of different approaches, and I think now we've given the responsibility back to the Aboriginal governments, and along with the funding, we do have Aboriginal languages unit, and we also have French language unit, and I'm very pleased that the federal government has saw fit to increase funding for Aboriginal languages. That we've just signed a new contract with a new 5 or 7 year contract, I think it is, with the government of Canada, where the funding for Aboriginal languages has increased significantly. So I think that gives us more hope that we'll be able to save those Aboriginal languages. Thank you.
Thank you both. The Premier has to leave about 12:15, 12:20, and I'd like to give Mr. Tutu the last round. So Mr. Deltel, and then I believe Ms. O'Connell's given her time to Mr. Bagnall. Mr. Deltel.
Thank you, Chair, and I will be very pleased to meet my colleague, Mr. Tutu, to have the time. Premier, be welcome in your House of Commons. Great honor for me and for all of us to see you here. I want to raise the issue about the Beaufort Delta. And if you don't mind, I will speak in my native language. Vous avez, dans votre document, vous avez...
In your document, you strongly denounce the fact that there was a 5-year moratorium imposed for oil and gas exploration in the Beaufort Sea, and that you were impacted directly both in terms of jurisdiction but also economic development. Could you explain your position in this issue?
Well, you have to recognize that in the Beaufort Delta, there's been significant oil and gas activity back in Prime Minister Trudeau days, where there was significant incentives where you spent $1, you'd get 90% of that subsidized. So there was a lot of drilling activity in those days. The people in the region have invested money, are looking forward to benefit from oil and gas development over the years, and they're still hoping for that. There was work bid on that in the neighborhood of about $2.3 billion, and the land claims that were negotiated with Aboriginal governments also recognized that, and there was provisions that we also had a devolution agreement where there was a legal commitment or commitment to negotiate offshore management of the Beaufort. So those were the kinds of things that were out there. And also the land claim with Inuvialuit, there was a requirement for consultation, and that didn't happen either. So.
Est-ce que cet enjeu-là peut avoir un impact en fait?
Could this issue have an impact, or rather, could climate change, the fact that from now on we may even see ships being able to go through the northern passageways, would that have an impact on resource development on your territory?
Well, as you know, there's been cruise ships with the Northwest Passage open much longer. There's a lot more cruise ships going through. I think the most we've ever had was, 75 cruise ships in the Northwest Territory or in the northern part of Canada. We have, in conjunction with Alberta, there was a joint study done on pipelines. If you can't go north, east or west, perhaps you could look at north. And the study concluded that it was feasible, that you could at some point export on an annual regular basis. You would obviously need some icebreaker support, and you would need some more infrastructure developed in Tuktoyaktuk and some of the other going up and down the valley. So the potential is there, and it could be done, but that remains to be seen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Premier, welcome, and thank you very much for attending here today. I'm going to give my time over to Mr. Bagnall. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Parliamentary Secretary, Ms. Pepitas-Taylor. She came north last week and did a roundtable on education. And the 3 colleges are putting together an application to help people whenever they get out of high school. It's about $60 million, I think, to get to the next level, to apprentice, to professions, to university. Could you talk about if you're supportive of that and the importance of education in your economic development?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, obviously, education is one of the highest, if not the highest priority for our government. We feel that certainly for people in smaller communities, that education is a way to allow them to gain marketable skills. We do have a very good student financial assistance program, but we don't have any universities, for example, so we're not able to access the billions of dollars that's available in universities in the South and all these centers of excellence. So we do have a community college, Aurora College, and we are doing a review of the college and its programs, and there's at least 2 other institutions that are looking to get accreditation so that they could access funding. But we think it's very important, apprenticeship programs and all of these different educational programs, and we would certainly would like to see a University of the North, preferably in the Northwest Territories at some point.
Thank you. I'll just ask one more question, but it'll have 3 parts, so it'll probably use up all the time. First is, we haven't talked about arts yet. I know in my territory it's a very important part of the economy, if you could talk about that. And then second, any needs you have related to airports and ports.
Certainly, in the Northwest Territories, art is very important. I know many people, many households rely on arts to make a living and survive. Even growing up, my mother was very big on arts, and she made a lot of money from doing moose hair tuftings. And these are the kinds of programs that our government likes to support, because we know that money goes right directly to the people and stays in the communities. So we support trapping, we support arts, we support all the artisans, and we try to make it easier for them by making materials available. We even have business loans that they can access, and we also work with them to develop markets. Airports is very important to us. They're very concerned about requirements for additional requirements that are being put on airports, the length of the runways and the types of airports that can land and so on. It's critical to the health of a community. Ports, we would certainly like a port. We don't have a port in the Northwest Territories, and we think that if we ever had a port, it would certainly improve and help diversify our economy. And now that we have a road to Tuktoyaktuk, we think Tuktoyaktuk would be a good place to have a port.
Thank you both. Mr. Tutu, welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good to see you again, Mr. McLeod, or Premier. I said there's 2 Mr. McLeods here. Clan McLeod. I have 3 questions. I'll try and get through. And you was talking on, you mentioned about your along with the Nunavut and the North and the Yukon, looking at sitting down and coming to a mutually agreeable agreement with the federal government in relation to carbon pricing. And I think all three of us understand and recognize the uniqueness of the circumstances of the North, being totally reliant on diesel and already hit the highest cost of living in the country. Would your goal, I guess, look at coming to some kind of agreement that would mean that for all the territories that this would be a cost-neutral exercise? Thank you.
Well, that's something we've talked to the government of Canada, and we've all agreed that we'd work together to make sure that we understood what the implications of a introduction of a carbon pricing mechanism would be before we would introduce it. So I think that gives us some flexibility. There's a lot of concern, for example, with the diamond mines in the north, that there's been a suggestion that if we introduce a carbon tax without some investigation of the implications, that it might shorten the life of these mature mines. We've been given assurance that any revenues from a carbon tax could stay in the north and stay in the jurisdiction. So perhaps there's some flexibility there. And we are, as I said, we are doing consultations with all of the communities, all of the industry sectors, so that we have a very good idea of what the implications would be when we look at doing so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Premier. The second question I got, and it affects, I think, the same for all three territories, these national formulas. And you mentioned it on a per capita funding, just historically hasn't worked for us, and for all three territories. And the huge infrastructure deficit, the low level of services with health outcomes, with healthcare funding and things like that. Do you think that that these national formulas don't work for the territories, and that there should be the government needs to look at thinking outside the box and outside these national formulas in dealing with the unique circumstances of the North? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I think that would be helpful. I think in the healthcare system, the government is doing that. They have specific provisions for the three territories. I think on not only the infrastructure side, but also, for example, on reserve and off reserve funding, for example, housing and so on. A lot of times we lose out because we don't have reserves, and we do have status or treaty Indians that live in the Northwest Territories. And so those are the kinds of things that we are concerned about, and this is something that we constantly raise, and I think that our members of parliament do a good job of making sure that the government of the day is aware of these subtle differences, and so it's important for us because we're a small jurisdiction and we have to keep a very close eye on our budgets. So.
Mr. Tutu?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last question, I think you hit the nail on the head in your opening comments when you talked about the lack of public infrastructure, and I think to me that's probably one of the hugest barriers to sustainable economic growth in all three territories. Canada put in the roads, across the country. They put in the rail line, they put in the airports, they put in the ports on the east and west coast, but that didn't happen in the north. And I think that Canada needs to make a significant investment in infrastructure in the north beyond where they are right now, knowing just by increasing your borrowing limit, it's like just giving you more rocks in a leaky boat. Recognizing that the territories have limited opportunities to generate own source revenues, and because of the historic way that things have been rolled out, that we are so far behind. that, you know, to me that's an investment. Yeah, it's expensive for some of the, like, you know, the Grace Bay project or the Manitoba Road and Hydro project, you know, the Deep Sea Port in Iqaluit. All these types of infrastructure projects are cost a lot of money. You got to remember that, like, a dollar down here is 33 cents up there, just because of the high cost of doing things, and that, you know, that investing in infrastructure in the north, or any investment in the north, as you pointed out clearly, that is an direct investment, indirect investment into the southern economy. So, you know, do you feel that that the federal government needs to make a significant, you know, investment in infrastructure in the north in order to create a strong and stable, vibrant economy that will lead to self-sufficiency of the territories and help, you know, for your guys' problem of people leaving because there's no opportunities? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and certainly that's a very important element for us, and that's a message that we are constantly given, because we recognize that we're a very small population, and you know, we get asked, well, why should the government spend money in an area where there's a small population? But I think it's very important for the North is a part of Canada, and we shouldn't be penalized for where we live, and I think that investing in the North also helps provide for Arctic sovereignty, and I think that if everybody left the North, then I think that would be an issue, but I think that the people that are there like living there. They think it's a good place to live, work, and invest, and we'd like to keep it like that, and with some more investment, I think we can get more economic development and more people to come and stay in there. Thank you.
Thank you both. I do have one last question, Mr. Premier. In your submission, you point out that there are opportunities in exploration and mining related to minerals such as lithium, bismuth, and other rare earths. And rare earths are very important in this day and age, which are key components in the emerging green technology and digital sectors. And you go on to say that there's 2 mines for those commodities have already received their environmental regulatory permits, but can't get the required funding to commence operations. What can the federal government do in that regard to help? Because I really do believe that is opportunity for the North. It's opportunity for the country as a whole, and it would add to growth in our economy. What needs to be done there to hit the end goal?
Well, we were in a situation where we had 4 mining projects that went through the regulatory process, that were fully approved, and all the permits were approved, and only one of them went ahead, and that was the Getchukwe diamond mine, because they had the money and they were able to go into immediate construction. The Nachalacho rare earth project had to raise $1.6 billion to start construction. Nico gold and lithium project has to raise about $500 million to go ahead. We are working with the federal government. The road, the Clecho all-weather road, will help facilitate raising a capital for the Nico project, because the road to the all-weather road will reduce their cost of building a road to the mining project, and so if the federal government could find a way to help us work with these companies to access capital, perhaps the infrastructure bank that's been talked about, perhaps we haven't heard the full details about that. That might be an opportunity. Certainly, I've been to China 5 times, and we always have mining companies along to try to find ways to raise capital. And so we think if the commodity prices improve, and if we can find a way to work with the industry to raise capital, that would certainly help go a long ways. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Premier, for your presentation, and committee members for their questions. We will leave it at that. Just for the committee's information, we do have another committee meeting right after votes, around 3:30. But to give members something to think about between now and then, the Minister of Finance has offered to come to committee on the 10th. On the 10th to appear before us on estimates and on the budget, not the Budget Implementation Act, because we won't have it by that time. So if we want to accept that offer, we'll determine that at 3:30. Thank you, Mr. Premier. Again, meeting adjourned.